The second my dad hit me in front of the judge, everything changed. The sound cracked through the courtroom, sharp, unmistakable. For a moment, no one moved. Not the judge, not the lawyers, not even the bailiff. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. I didn't react right away either. My head turned slightly from the force, but I stayed standing. My hand tightened instinctively around Sophie's small fingers. She flinched beside me, her grip trembling as she looked up at me with wide, confused eyes. "Mom?" she whispered. I didn't answer. Behind me, my father, Carlos, exhaled like nothing had happened. Like this was normal. Like I was still a child he could control. "You're making a mistake," he muttered under his breath, low enough that only I could hear. "Just agree to it." Agree to it. Like this was some simple form, like signing a paper meant nothing. Across the courtroom, my sister Marina sat perfectly still, hands folded, expression composed. She didn't look surprised. She didn't look concerned. She looked like she was waiting. That's when something inside me settled. Not anger, not panic. Clarity. The judge suddenly stood, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Mr. Morales," she began, her voice cutting through the frozen silence. But I wasn't listening anymore. I looked down at Sophie. Her mauling hand clutched mine like I was the only thing keeping her steady. And maybe I was. "Come on," I said quietly. I turned and walked out. No permission, no explanation. Just walked. The courtroom doors closed behind us with a heavy thud, muting the rising chaos inside. Out in the hallway, everything felt colder, sharper, real. My hands were shaking now, but not from fear. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and dialed the number I had saved but prayed I wouldn't need. It rang once, twice. Then, "Yeah?" I swallowed, my voice steady despite everything. "It's time." I hung up. And for the first time that day, I wasn't the one being cornered anymore. 3 weeks earlier. I thought it was just dinner. It started so normal it almost feels stupid now. Marina texted me out of nowhere. "Come over tonight. I'll cook. Bring Sophie." That alone should have felt strange. My sister and I hadn't been close in years. Not after she moved out, built her perfect life, and slowly stopped calling. But I said yes, because I was tired. Because juggling 2 part-time jobs, rent, daycare, and everything else left me with no space to question good things when they showed up. And that's exactly how it felt at first. Good. Her house was spotless, quiet, stable, the kind of place where nothing ever felt rushed or messy. Sophie loved it immediately. She ran straight to the living room, laughing, pointing at the neatly arranged toys like they'd been waiting just for her. Marina smiled at that. "I picked those up last week," she said casually. "Thought she might like them." I should have asked why. Instead, I just said thank you. Dinner was warm, easy. For a moment, it felt like we were actually a family again. Marina asked about my schedule, Sophie's school, how things were going. At the time, it felt like concern. Now I know it was inventory. Because after that night, she didn't stop. She started showing up more, dropping off groceries, offering to babysit, sending money just in case. At first, I resisted. "I've got it," I told her. But she'd just smile, calm, patient. "You don't have to do everything alone, Lena." And slowly, I let her in. That's when the comments started. Subtle, almost invisible. "You're working late again? She seems tired. Is this really the best routine for her?" Little things, but they added up. Then came my dad. One afternoon, he sat across from me at the kitchen table, his tone unusually serious. "Marina's trying to help," he said. You should listen to her. I am, I replied. But this is my kid. He leaned forward slightly. She could give Sophie more stability than this. That word stuck. Stability. Like what I was giving wasn't enough. That night, I stayed over at Marina's place later than usual. Sophie had fallen asleep on the couch, and I went to grab my bag from the hallway. That's when I heard them. Marina and my dad. Low voices. Careful. The lawyer said we're close, Marina murmured. Then push her, my dad replied. She'll crack. My stomach dropped. I didn't move, didn't breathe. She won't agree easily, Marina said. A pause. Then my dad again, colder this time. She doesn't have a choice. Everything inside me went still. This wasn't help. This wasn't concern. This was a plan, and I was already inside it. Lena wasn't just being pushed out. She was being replaced. The envelope was thick. That's the first thing I noticed. Not the official seal, not my name printed in bold across the front, just how heavy it felt in my hands. Like whatever was inside was final. I didn't open it right away. Sophie was sitting on the floor nearby, coloring, humming softly to herself. Normal, safe, unaware. I waited until she went to bed. Then I opened it. Legal language, dense, cold. But one phrase stood out immediately. Petition for custody, filed by Marina Morales. I read it 3 times, hoping I misunderstood. I didn't. She wasn't helping me. She was trying to take my daughter. The court process moved fast, faster than I expected. Marina had everything prepared: documents, schedules, financial records, even character references. She looked polished, like she had stepped into a role she'd been rehearsing for months. Meanwhile, I sat there feeling like every part of my life was being dissected. Ms. Morales works inconsistent hours. Missed 2 school meetings. Currently behind on rent. Each statement landed like a quiet udar. Not lies. But not the full truth either. I was working, trying, holding everything together the only way I could. But in that room, it didn't sound like effort. It sounded like failure. Then my dad took the stand. I didn't think he would go that far. I was wrong. She's overwhelmed, he said, not even looking at me. Sophie needs structure, stability. That word again, stability. He spoke like I wasn't even there, like I was already gone. That's when it clicked. This wasn't a sudden concern. This wasn't about helping. This had been planned. Every visit, every question, every offer. They weren't supporting me. They were documenting me. After the hearing, I sat in my car for almost an hour, staring at nothing. Then I called the only number I could think of, a legal aid office. The attorney I met with didn't sugarcoat anything. They're building a neglect case, she said plainly. Not just preference. If they win this the wrong way, you could lose more than custody. My chest tightened. How much more? She held my gaze. Visitation. That word hit harder than anything else. Not seeing Sophie every day was one thing, but not seeing her at all? No, that wasn't happening. Something shifted in me right then. I stopped reacting, stopped explaining, stopped hoping they'd back off. Instead, I started paying attention, saving messages, recording conversations, watching patterns. If they were building a case against me, then I'd build one back. By the time the final hearing date was set, I wasn't walking in unprepared. Not this time. Not anymore. Back in the courtroom, everything was already in motion. The moment my father's hand hit my face, that was the moment their entire plan began to collapse. They just didn't know it yet. The courtroom had frozen, but I hadn't. Not really. Because deep down, I'd been expecting something like this. Not hoping for it, but preparing for it. For weeks, I had watched my dad lose control in smaller ways. Sharp words, sudden anger, pressure that kept building every time I refused to cooperate. He needed me to give in. And I didn't. So eventually, something had to break. It just happened to break in the worst place possible, for him. When I walked out of that courtroom with Sophie, it wasn't panic guiding me. It was timing. My heart was racing, yes, but my thoughts were clear. Because I had already set this part in motion. The call I made in the hallway wasn't random. It was to someone who had been waiting nearby, just in case things went exactly like this. It's time. 2 words, that's all it took. What no one inside that courtroom knew was that I hadn't spent the last few weeks just defending myself. I had been documenting everything. Every conversation where Marina pushed too hard, every moment my dad crossed a line, every time they tried to corner me into agreeing. I kept it all, quietly, carefully, legally. But evidence alone wasn't enough. I needed them to show who they really were, without filters, without preparation, and my dad did exactly that. In front of a judge, in a custody hearing. A few minutes after I made the calls, Sophie and I were still standing in the hallway when I heard it. Heavy footsteps, multiple. Then the courtroom doors swung open, hard. The sound echoed down the hall, sharp enough to turn heads instantly. Inside, voices shifted, confused, tense. We stepped back toward the entrance just as 2 figures moved past us and into the room. A court-appointed investigator and a police officer. Right on time. I followed them in, Sophie's hand still firmly in mine. This time, I wasn't walking out. I was walking back in, with control. Every eye in that courtroom snapped toward us. Marina's expression cracked for the first time. My dad looked confused, then uneasy. The judge straightened, clearly thrown off by the sudden interruption. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded. The investigator didn't hesitate. He looked directly at the bench, then briefly at my father and said clearly, "You have 5 minutes to fix this." Silence. Heavy. Immediate. Total. No one spoke. No one moved. Because in that moment, everything shifted. I stepped forward, not as the woman they had been picking apart for weeks, but as someone who already knew how this was about to end. And for the first time, they weren't in control anymore. The silence in the courtroom didn't last long. The judge turned sharply toward the investigator. "Explain. Now." He didn't raise his voice, didn't rush, but every word landed with weight. "We received submitted evidence this morning," he said, gesturing slightly toward me. "Audio recordings, documented communication, and a timeline suggesting coercion and coordinated attempts to manipulate custodial circumstances." A ripple moved through the room. Marina's posture stiffened. My dad's face shifted. Confusion first, then something closer to realization. I stepped forward before anyone could interrupt. "I didn't come here unprepared," I said. My voice didn't shake this time. "I came here because I knew what they were doing." I handed the folder to my attorney, who passed it to the judge. Inside it, everything. Recordings of Marina calmly discussing building a stronger case, messages from my dad pressuring me to give up custody, notes showing how situations had been twisted, framed, exaggerated. Not lies, but not truth either. Manufactured concern. "And what happened today," the investigator continued, "is no longer just a custody matter." His eyes flicked briefly toward my father. "It's conduct that raises serious legal concerns." That's when it fully hit them. This wasn't their case anymore. My dad tried to speak.
"This is being blown out of proportion. Enough!"
The judge cut in, firm. For the first time since this started, she wasn't looking at me with scrutiny. She was looking at them. The decision came faster than I expected. "The petition for custody is dismissed," she said clearly. "Effective immediately." A breath I didn't realize I was holding finally released. But she wasn't done. "Additionally, this court is referring this matter for further review regarding coercion and inappropriate conduct." Marina's composure cracked completely now. My dad said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Sophie squeezed my hand again, tighter this time. Not scared. Certain. Weeks later, everything felt quieter. Not perfect, but ours. Our apartment was small, a little worn, but filled with something that hadn't been there before. Peace. Sophie sat on the floor, drawing again, just like the night the letter came. She looked up at me. "Are they going to take me again?" I walked over, kneeling in front of her. "No," I said, steady, certain. This time, I knew it was true. Outside, the world kept moving, but inside that moment, everything had finally stopped shifting beneath my feet. Because this time, they ran out of control.